My name is is Adrian Baranchuk. I am from Argentina and I have spent the last 23 years in Canada. I am a full professor at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. And I am also a professor of medicine in the Universidad Abierta Interamericana from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I have built an academic lab that currently has 154 active students doing research from all around the world, some of them from China, from Hong Kong, from Europe, Latin America, and North America. So the lab produces different manuscripts on different topics. Some of them are general cardiology, for example, the Net Heart Project. The Net Heart is neglected tropical diseases affecting the heart, and so far has produced 23 papers and one book called the Net Heart Book, published by Elsevier, which is currently one of the three most important editorials around the world. My personal production is between 20 to 30 papers per year, which cannot be done without having a massive support from students, residents, and fellows. In my lab, when a young individual that is doing its first steps in academics usually goes as first author. So it's very easy to check in PubMed my production, which is around 750 papers, a little bit more, that the first author is a very young individual. And you will also notice, Ms. Sophia, that there is an equity and balance, gender equity in the production of my papers. So I try to pay attention that regardless your gender, your geography, your skin color, your religious beliefs, if you are dedicated to advanced knowledge, you're welcome into my lab. There's no restrictions for anybody. It's a wonderful question because
Yeah.
I didn't plan this. So I grew up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in South America.
Mm-hmm.
I finished my training as an internal medicine, cardiology, and electrophysiology. That means all the electrical activity of the heart. And I was working as a young attending for 4 to 5 years when there was a huge economic crisis in Argentina, which motivated me to emigrate in order to learn some aspects, and I didn't know research at that point, but some aspects of technology, high technology, that could impact how I treated patients with conduction disorders, with arrhythmias. And that was the motivation to go to Spain initially, where in addition to that, I met with incredible people like Jose Angel Cabrera, who is currently a cardiac anatomist #1 in the world, who took me to his research lab and to his animal lab and started to shape on me the idea that I could get involved into research. And 1 year later, a mentor that I do recognize now, called Carlos Murillo. He's a Colombian that he was trained in Canada, then went back to Colombia. He returned to Canada and he wanted me to retrain with him in Canada under the umbrella of high tech and specific treatments that were adequate in the 2002, 2003. So we're talking about more than 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So with my wife, we decided to move from Spain to Canada, and we were doing very well in Spain. We were very happy. And Canada to us was a country that was in the north, under the snow. We knew nothing about Canada. And I arrived to my McMaster, where I spent 2.5 years, and then a series of possibilities opened to me and I chose going to Kingston, my current city, to Queen's University. But that shaped on me, as you suggested, Miss Sophie, the larger perspective or a wider perspective on how social, cultural, and interactions with different communities shaped me the tolerance to accept different approaches to regular life. In the middle of this process, in between Spain and McMaster in Canada, I've been surrounded by incredible researchers. Jerónimo Ferrer in Spain, Stuart Connolly, Salim Yusuf in Canada. And that woke up in me the need to formulate and answer questions. And you say, but how did it happen? Because we were talking about this 8 hours a day. So it started happening to me that I went to sleep, and in the middle of the night, I could wake up with a question. So I had to buy at that time a small recorder because the next morning I could forget about it. And in the middle of the night, just put in an idea in order to be able and to learn how you answer an idea. Because we all have ideas, but it doesn't mean that that idea was not answered 60 years ago, right? So I went back to university. I took courses in McMaster, and at some point when I got invited to join Queen's University, I was full of ideas, and I received the time in order to be able to accomplish some of them. And this is how my research production started about 23 years ago. I arrived to Queen's with 5 papers as a co-author, and currently I am in the ballpark of 860, of which 750 something are in PubMed. So, and the production of research doesn't stop, and I still wake up in the middle of the night with good ideas, something that my wife doesn't enjoy because now I'm waking her up. But but the process of how to capitalize an idea and to make the proper search and design to answer it in an evidence-based format is something that has evolved in the last 20 years and makes me very, very happy and proud. So, Ms. Sophie, I see like 2 questions in one. One
Okay.
is, what is my feeling or my thoughts about AI impacting medicine, and specifically ECG interpretation. And the other one is how AI is impacting young individuals in their studying. And me having a almost 20-year-old daughter, I can tell you that the impact is quite significant. So let's start with the first part. So AI is here to stay. It's not a transient, like with clothing, that it's very common to use whatever it is, and then 2 years later that piece is no longer in the market. No, AI is here to stay. Is the evolution of our society, is the need of solving daily issues in a more effective and speed manner. That doesn't mean that I fully support AI in every aspect of our life. I'm just describing what it is and what I think it's going to happen. Several stuff that we do daily is going to be impacted, and there will be an incorporation of AI during those daily activities. And that goes from somebody at home to somebody at work in any capacity. In medicine, we've been delaying the organization of certain aspects that were taking hours and hours and days and months. And when you see still that in certain parts of the world, you need a doctor and you have to wait 3 months until you see a doctor, and when you see the doctor it's too late, there is a process that can be expedited in order to integrate this into the social needs and help people. Now let's go to ECG. AI in ECG exists in the world for the last 40 years minimum. When you do an ECG and you have a title that says normal sinus rhythm with premature atrial contractions, that interpretation was done automatically by the machine. How? Via AI. So when people get surprised, AI and the ECGs, I go, hold on a second. This has been with us for more than 40 years. How accurate is the current system that we are using in 2025? Around 65% sensitivity. That means that almost 1 in 3 diagnoses made by the machine is wrong. Why? Because the process of machine learning was done 40 years ago. I spent 5 years of my life trying to convince the producers of these machines to incorporate P-wave analysis. I traveled the world. I met with the top. And the answer was, Adrian, are we going to sell more machines because they bring P-wave analysis? It didn't happen. So now, the current AI, how is the machine learning process? Who is feeding with knowledge the machine? 2 things to be alert. Number 1, if you feed the machine with results from ECGs machines currently used, you are feeding the new AI with a sensitivity of 65%. And Miss Sophie, how AI is going to improve that if the way that you teach the machine is that poor? So, investigators around the world, your machine learning process fed with results of the current ECG machines is not valid. We are not going to use it. Don't do research based on that. You're going to waste money and time. Number 2, there is a pyramid of knowledge. Here is the ones that know the more at the top. In the bottom, the ones that know the less. If you need to put millions of ECGs read by somebody in order to feed a machine, if you use the bottom, your sensitivity is highly likely to be in the ballpark of 65–70%. You need to use people that is in the top of the knowledge pyramid to be the feeders. So every time that this person says normal sinus rhythm, there is 99% probability that that person is right. That takes time, but it is the only way to do it. If we want AI one day to replace doctors. And of course, my friends, if you compare AI results versus general doctors with a knowledge of electrocardiology from 1 to 10 in the 5–6 range, AI is going to be better, of course. But you don't need to compare to those. You need to compare to the top of the pyramid in order to show the community that the machine is better than the people with highest knowledge of ECG around the world. It's a long process, but it is a process that if it is well done, it's going to change this specialty, because basically the ECG will bring information that currently is being ignored by a large proportion of doctors that are not familiarized with that. So If in the title says normal sinus rhythm with premature atrial contractions representing 65% of total cardiac beats, you, without being an expert in electrocardiology, are going to receive an information that may change the management of the patient. And this is why I'm so critical that people working in AI ECG has to do proper machine learning. Are there groups in the world doing that? Yes, definitely. Some of them from Sweden. Dr. Linda Johnson is one of the leaders on this topic, doing spectacular processes of machine learning. Mayo Clinic in the US. So there are groups, and they are not the only ones. There are several groups doing this very seriously. So let's support them, and let's be critical. If you detect production of research where the machine learning is not appropriate, just say it so we can correct it, right?
Yeah.
The second process is how AI is impacting education. And I think this is here to stay. Essays. You can write it as a human, or ChatGPT can write it for you. So we need to stimulate our teenagers to be creative, not to use tools, but to be creative, that something that is written on the paper should come from their brains, not from some machine process that is thinking for them. Prohibition of using accessible tools has failed over centuries. Prohibition is not the way. The way is proper integration, is using the time that we have to the one-to-one interaction with the students to show them, this is gonna be you if you produce all your stuff using ChatGPT or any other way of AI, versus you making mistakes by your own with content that comes from your brain. Now, if you use this in order to shape what you produce, to make it even better, to make it more organized, the tool is there. They're going to use it, you like it or not. And it's not something that you have to exercise prohibition. We know, for example, with substance abuse, that prohibition has very little impact. What it has impact is education. So educate teenagers to use their brains. Seek for things that they have to do where there is no way that this type of electronic automatic systems can help them. To amplify your question and to go into the next 5 to 10 years in cardiovascular medicine and how RCM can be a reflection of this. And by the way, RCM brings content in a very large spectrum of cardiovascular diseases. And I think that I could stimulate my colleagues to be critical. The things that we did good in the last 20 years, let's continue to do them. But let's be critical. What things we didn't do well? And one of the major things that hits me every single day of my life is that we fail in controlling obesity. Obesity remains a major critical failure of cardiovascular medicine. Today, you go out and you see morbid obesity again and again and again in our societies. I travel the world. I've been in Mexico 3 days ago, in Ecuador 2 weeks ago. I live in Canada. And this is a major problem. And it is a problem that we have to refocus, because trying to do what we thought we had to do to prevent obesity in teenagers, it's failing. And the only way for us to de-articulate this is to be critical of what strategies we apply in high-income countries, in my case, very clear in the US and Canada, or in low and medium-income countries, Mexico and Ecuador, Argentina. We did something that structurally is wrong, that societies with money or societies without money are moving into morbid obesity, impacting all areas of cardiovascular medicine, because that brings diabetes, that brings coronary artery disease, that brings conduction disorders and arrhythmias. Atrial fibrillation and obesity is very clearly established. So what I think for the role of RCM is to bring together a body of researchers with experience in obesity. That's not my area, but I could read these papers with fascination, doing a critical analysis of what we did wrong in order not to repeat it, and how can we bring obesity back at the table at a scientific, social, and political arena all together to make the big change for the next 10, 20 years. There is something that is unique, which is we thought that cardiovascular disease was starting at the age of 65, 70. Then we moved, no, that's too late. People in the 50s. Then we say, hey, hold on a second. We're seeing a lot of people with multiple risk factors in the 40s, in the 30s. People. This starts in early childhood. Kids at the age of 3 to 5 years old may have their destiny already played because they are morbidly obese and they are with a phone, looking at the phone 12 hours a day, rather than going to a park that is free, to walk around the block that is free, to have a ball or a bike. They are not free, but they are mostly affordable. So we need to reset up education where being active and moving is goal number one. Why? Because after 7 years, now they are 12, 7 years of obesity, their vasculature, endothelium, pancreas, hormones are affected by obesity. So when they are 30, they have their first cardiac event. And then they have to live the rest of their lives with a condition that if we detected at the age of 35 and we change the structure of how these people is going to grow in their specific societies, with lots of money, with no money, we could have an impact that could generate a new generation of individuals with less cardiovascular diseases. All this, the strong work we did with tabacism, now we have to move it to nutrition, proper nutrition, nutrition associated with social possibilities. It's very easy to say, eat fruits and veggies, but you can only afford a piece of bread, right? When we divorce what we want them to eat with what they can afford in their societies, we are sending a useless speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to, but I don't give you the tools to do that. So this is why this type of public health strategies do require integration with society and with politics. Politicians need to understand how much less they are going to spend if they have a healthier community than if they have 10, 15, 20% of the community associated with diseases that require the state to pay a lot of money. So even from an economic perspective, it's good for society, not to talk about life in general, right? So this has started at a time where my perspective was to reach the largest possible population with my ideas and my research. And at the same time, being sure that those vehicles were respected at an international level and had a structure of transparency, right? And those are things that RCM accomplished completely, which is I feel very comfortable reading those papers because if there is a conflict of interest from the authors, it is declared in the paper. It is virtually impossible for researchers to do research without funding. So receiving funding is not receiving directions of what you have to do necessarily. So if you declare all your conflict of interest, that shows transparency for the reader. And the first thing I do before I submit a paper to a journal is, am I happy reading papers from that journal? And RCM has now a quite wide advertising. I am on X sending a message, and below that there is a paper from RCM with a link to the paper, or advertising that an important paper from an important group around the world is being published. So I can use that as a non-voluntary advertising that I may be missing something. So I am in the phone and I go directly to that paper, and sometimes I grab it in the phone. I cannot see it because my eyes are not that good. So then I go to the computer and I open it and I download the paper that I need to read. So the international board is also one of the things to be highlighted. While there is an Asian population behind the creation of these, there are people from the 5 continents represented in the board, which gives geographical equity. And those things made me believe that I can do my little contribution to this by belonging to the editorial board. Will expand your question, Ms. Sophie, because I think it's a very important one. So the criteria that I use to accept to review a paper are: A, it's coming from a journal that shows transparency during the process, that protects the author of the manuscript, and that does not offer to reviewers a specific recognition, or let's put it this way, economic recognition. And I dispute this a lot. I don't think that reviewers should be paid. RCM adheres to these rules. The second thing is this a journal that has a reputation in the market? And by reputation, I mean is respected by colleagues in my area of knowledge. If the answer is yes, I do proceed with that. RCM accomplished that as well. And the number 3 is the paper that is being submitted to me under my area of knowledge? And I do reject lots of invitations because there was a reference or two in that paper with my name, and the editor or the associate editor thought, hey, maybe Adrian can review it. But the fact that the author used my prior papers doesn't mean that I feel myself capable of doing a review. And this is a way to respect the author of the paper. If I am not if comfortable with the topic that is being assigned to me, I prefer to reject the revision than to accept it and do a poor job that may affect the evolution of a paper that could be great, but simply I didn't know how good it was because it fall outside my area of knowledge. So have I rejected reviewing papers from RCM here. There, yes. If you ask me, I don't remember, but for sure, because basically I try not to invest time in areas where I know that I'm not capable to make a fair evaluation of a manuscript. So this is excellent. I mean, basically, you have an idea. You are now thinking all day long, you're doing your stuff, but you keep thinking about that idea. The first thing that I recommend young individuals is to do a systematic search of the literature to determine whether that idea has been explored by different researchers in the last decade at least. And if your idea has been, and the questions that that idea trigger have been answered. If you find that, yes, exactly, that idea has been answered, there are two possibilities. Possibility number one is you narrow your idea. You had a big question. What is the physiopathology of? Boom. In 2023, there's a paper called The Physiopathology of. It's answered. But now you can see if there is a proper epidemiological discrimination in whom that condition occurs. Oh, it happens that it's mentioned in 3 papers, but there is not a paper about the epidemiology of that condition. So you have narrowed your question, and now you're going to talk specifically about this. You can continue with this. But if you narrow the question 1 or 2 times, and those were also answered, you may discard this idea and to start seeking for a new idea. And when you are young, you may have great ideas, but my piece of advice for all young students, residents, fellows, technicians, is seek for a mentor. And sometimes a mentor is not a single individual. Sometimes it's 2 or 3, but one of them may have the opportunity to discuss with you and find ideas that could be doable. Once you have the idea identified as a novel idea, not as a repetition of the same thing again and again, is when you have and you need a mentor to help you designing the research question. Because you may have an idea, but it's a superficial global idea. Now you need a research question because the design of your study is going to be associated with what the research question is. That will tell you, I need to do a chart review, I need to do a prospective observational study, I need to do a randomized control trial. So once you have the design, you have to ask yourself and your mentor, can I afford doing this? Do I have the funds to do a randomized control trial testing drug A versus placebo, for example? And if you are not going to be able to fund that, then you have to reformulate your question to do something that you can afford. Now that you have the design, it starts the process. And for that, you have to write a protocol. If you are going to seek for funding, you need to have a protocol. The protocol has certain structure that you need to learn. And sometimes learning it by yourself is quite difficult. But if you have a mentor that publishes regularly, the mentor can help you by providing you with templates. And so on and so forth, as you can see. This is why I strongly stimulate young researchers to seek for mentors. One of the examples, Ms. Shaila Gupta, currently second year med student at the Faculty of Ottawa. At the age of 19, she published her first paper as first author in JACC, Malaria and Heart. Is currently one of the individuals with largest knowledge in malaria and heart when she's still not ready to see patients by herself. That paper brings two algorithms, one for high-income countries, one from low and medium-income countries, on how to manage patients with malaria that could have the cardiovascular system affected. So how is it possible that a 19-year-old individual is progressing research? We call it intergenerational equity. Thinking that for producing research you have to have white hair is a mistake. It's a big mistake. Young individuals can bring fresh ideas, energy, capacity to absorb and canalize and vehicleize questions and projects, and they require a mentor that the first time is going to teach, for example, this sequence going from the generation of the idea to the execution of the idea, and the second time you're supervising because now this individual knows how to do that. So remove your ego, you remove your need to always be first, to allow young generations to take over and to take also leadership. We grew up in a society where leadership should come from the white-haired individuals, always. Yeah, sometimes for certain aspects, but that doesn't mean that young individuals cannot take leadership. And you could be surprised, Miss Sophie, in research, how many young individuals were the ones that brought the idea that end up changing that little word of a certain condition.